All right. Don't think. All right. Don't think. All right. Don't think. All right. Now I won't hear that anymore, so that's all right. Minimize that. I wish I was like 25 years old and understood all this stuff again. Yeah, you get to see all my bad habits too. Slightly less than helpful where it is, but whatever. All right, so
The music would turn back on. Samantha's song, the one that made those who heard it attack us viciously. Viciously and without mercy.
hey, Mr. Z, what's going on?
Who heard it attack us viciously and without mercy. See, that was how Tanya had died, and subsequently I had managed to pick up the extremely badass katana she had been.
Oh yeah, I totally ran out of breath for this one. I remember that. I think so. This is something I commonly do with audiobook editing, audiobook recording. If I'm not in my booth, and I'm not using my X Touch One, what I'll wind up doing is I'll record the whole thing in a big stripe, and then between my brain remembering where I screwed stuff up just an hour or so earlier, and some of the visual markers that are left behind, I can kind of tell where my error is. I remember screwing this up because this was a like a 50-word sentence, and I can see here's the first take where it was wrong, then here's the second take where it was wrong, and I think this is me probably screwing it up again, and this section here is probably the keeper. So if I hear the same words,
The weapon's weight felt.
no, that's different. So I think it might be this one.
That was how Tanya.
Yeah. So I saved myself a step by seeing that this one and this one look essentially the same. And here is where I allowed myself to take a breath in order to give myself space and edit to be able to get it to flow together. So that means that I can just come in here, make a cut there. That means this whole passage is junk, and all I have to do is ripple delete, and boom, and now I am in the right timing by way of pacing to have that start properly. So,
without mercy. That was how Tanya had died, and subsequently,
and this is the magic of editing. You can make anything sound normal if you leave yourself enough space to tighten things up.
I had managed to pick up the extremely badass katana she had been carrying as a weapon.
And now we get this out.
As a weapon, a souvenir her brother had brought back from Tokyo.
So one of my other tricks too is as I'm going along, I'm listening to the playback and I will hit pause or the space bar on my keyboard right where I know that I want the next word to start by way of pacing. And so now, if I make a cut there, I know that when I ripple delete anything that follows, it'll ripple delete and drag it right up to the point where I want it to start again. So that means I come over here, highlight that, and I've reprogrammed my magic mouse. You can probably see on there, I've got a little blackish bluish dot. That's the part on my mouse that I've programmed to do the ripple delete keyboard shortcut. And so all I have to do is highlight the passage I don't want, hit that, boom, everything's in order and ready to keep rolling. So
Tokyo. The weapon's weight felt perfectly balanced in my hand.
yeah, shortcuts for the win, absolutely. Um, I've tried. I'm all Mac based. I tried to get the Razer Tartarus, I think it is. It's a mouse that's got like 16 different buttons on the side of it. That would be fabulous, except for the fact that it doesn't play nicely with Apple products. So I'm stuck. I also have a Magic Mouse trackpad that gives me a little bit more room to, designate zones to tap in order to do shortcuts as well. But I don't know. There's something about even with my carpal tunnel, there's something about the mouse versus the trackpad that it works better for me. That's all I can say about it. So
Tokyo. The weapon's weight felt perfectly balanced in my hands, and I could tell.
now here's another trick too that this passage right here, this chunk of silence is too long. But if I simply cut in the middle, I've got up here, I've got my drag set to X fade. So in order to keep timing, all I have to do now, knowing that I want the next sound to start about here, all I got to do is just drag and overlap that too. And because that's cross faded, even if there is a little bit of noise floor behind me, it won't have this hard gap in it. And so now things are timed properly. So when I go back and start the play again, there we go. Start the play again.
Hands, and I could tell it was.
That's good, but it's still a little far off. So I'm going to get rid of this whole chunk here. I also have a delete function programmed on that mouse. So
My hands, and I could tell it was.
that sounds more natural. Hey, Anthony, how you doing, buddy? It was time to start doing this no matter what. So I've only spent a few $1,000s to be able to do this. I should probably give it a shot. So uh yeah, dude, it probably will be. I mean, the service that I'm using does do recording. Whether or not this is going to be of real utility, I don't quite know yet. Um, if there's something harvestable and good out of this, I'll probably save it and stick it up online. I am planning in the future, though, to make my courses and classes and stuff that I teach via streaming available online after the stream's done. So just know that going into the future, yes, that's the plan. So, but I have to coach at noon, so I've got a little under an hour to get this chapter done. This is a chapter a day process for me. So, And frankly, to be honest, I'm way behind on this damn project. It should have been done months ago, but the guy's cool about it, so I'm just making sure to get it wrapped up now. I imagine you guys aren't really hearing the system audio. You're only hearing it coming back through my monitors and up into the shotgun. Is that correct? One of you guys let me know in the comments. Anthony, I am not currently using a noise floor simulator or a noise floor track. This is not a traditional audiobook. This is for a streaming platform, a phone based app. And so I don't need to do that. However, for anything that's destined for ACX or Audible, I do put in, I have like an hour long ambient silent room tone, a very, very quiet one that I mix down to about negative 20 dB, and the rest of my audio then is treated and is completely clean. But then after I'm done, I put that noise floor track on top of everything else, and then to my main narration, I do a side chain compression so that that noise floor gets ducked down just a bit when my narration is over it. And one of these days, I'll show you guys about sidechain compression because it's a little bit confusing, but really handy to do what's referred to as auto ducking. So, oh yeah, negative 20 dB. There's no reason to have it be louder than that. Otherwise, it's just why are you going out of your way to make yourself an absolutely pristine, silent recording environment if all you're going to do is dump, you know, regular noise on top of things, right? So yeah, that's kind of how I do. So
Katana she had been carrying as a weapon, a souvenir her brother had brought back from Tokyo. The weapon's weight felt perfectly balanced in my hands, and I could tell it was not a cheap gift store knockoff.
so again, I just hit pause right where I want the next word to come in. So that what that does is that just saves me the mental math of ooh, where do I put this and so on. So now that I've done that ripple delete, the word that follows is exactly where I want it to be.
Knockoff. It was Tanya's brother's prized possession, and he had paid a small fortune for it.
One of the other things that I frequently do, and this is something that every producer kind of comes up with, they come up with their own style of this. When I go from the end of a paragraph to the beginning of the next paragraph, I typically give it probably what would be maybe no more than 500 milliseconds, but I give 500 milliseconds extra space at the end in the silent portion between one paragraph and the following paragraph. That kind of acoustically and mentally simulates moving from paragraph to paragraph, but in a way that registers with you when you're listening. Because paragraphs are there for a reason, okay? Paragraphs are to delineate one series of connected thoughts with another. And so a lot of times if you don't put that tiny extra little bit of pacing adjustment in between paragraphs, the whole thing just kind of feels like it's running together, you know? And it starts to not only begin to at times confuse the listener, but it's fatiguing to the listener. They don't feel like things are flowing. They feel like they're getting hit in the ears with a fire hose worth of sound. And that's just not pleasant. So, one of the things that we're tasked with doing as audiobook producers is effectively simulating the reading experience in the listening experience. And a lot of that comes down to pacing. So, all right. So, give that a little bit more. Like I said, we'll do it here. Flop. My little button sometimes is kind of inelegant and ignores me. So, and now you'll hear that. If I play it from here,
His brother's prized possession, and he had paid a small fortune for it.
so right there would be where, if it were a sentence, the next word would be. And actually, I can tell that I don't have quite enough bumper room in there. So I'll do this. So now when we
his
listen to that,
possession, and he had paid a small fortune for it. A few mental patients plugged their ears and
so that little bit of additional space feels good to the listener. That's kind of where I'm going to leave it. So,
plugged their ears immediately, looking
and eventually, what I'll do is I'll figure out how to port my system audio in here, so you guys aren't listening to this playback on a microphone. Although I probably should turn the volume up so you guys can hear it better. Okay, so
well, it was not a cheap gift store knockoff. It was Tanya's brother's prized possession, and he had paid a small fortune for it. A few mental patients plugged their ears immediately, looking dazed and concerned with how they had somehow ended up in the hallway.
So get rid of another chunk of space. I do love me some ripple delete.
Ended up in the hallway. My explanation seemed
My tracks, yeah, okay, so I typically put my primary narration as the very top ceiling track, okay? And then because this I do audiobooks in a slightly different way than other producers do. I do some atmospherics, I do some spatial modeling so that characters who are talking to each other in the story in situ actually sound like they're in a room or in a hallway or in a basement. And so that requires that I'm going to wind up having to have different tracks. This story is in a mental hospital with both a basement and kind of uh, caverns, a subterranean environment. So there's a lot of spatial modeling going on in this production. And so I've got hospital hallway, and then I also when I'm doing narration that involves dialogue, people step on each other with dialogue. They don't necessarily give the other person 2 seconds to respond. The other person responds as somebody's last word is trailing off, right? That's kind of how we communicate. And so I'll often have, like, here's hospital one, and then here's hospital two. That's because the last scene that I was working on, the last chapter, had the two people talking in the hospital in a hospital room. And because I want to at times be able to layer one passage over another person's speaking because they're two different characters. What I do is I just, once I have all the environmental acoustic modeling set up for a track, if I need another person to be speaking at the same time, I'll just duplicate that track. So everything down here, my Bruce Free channel EQ, the space designer that I'm using, and the audio processing that I'm using, Nectar 3, those are already duplicated. They're exactly the same. I had to add one to a different another track there, but normally they kind of all look like this, and then they all carry over the settings, and all I got to do is cut and paste the next person's dialogue in there. So
dazed and concerned with how they had somehow ended up in the hallway. My explanation seemed a few
see,
my explanation seemed to
there's a screw up. So we come back over here, drag that out, boom, delete, we're gone.
in the hallway. My explanation seemed to suit a few of the conspiracy theorist patients quite nicely. Quite nicely, and they were quick to follow.
See, I thought that that was the end of a sentence when I said quite nicely. And so I stopped it where I thought a new sentence would start. But I discover that right here is actually, this portion here is a continuation of that sentence. So we need to treat this space here like it's a comma, which means that now I'll take out yet again half as much, and now it'll sound proper.
Patients quite nicely, and they were quick to follow my instructions, even covered in gore as I was.
And then, yeah, to let you know what I'm doing with with this project. because I do approach different projects differently. If I'm doing like some nonfiction thing, I'll wind up not having to do nearly as much edit. But what I did here is you can see there's a whole mess of track back here, right? I've got uh, mm, 16 minutes worth of audio here to work with yet. Um, I do it this way because if it's all in one track, if I use that ripple delete, it's automatically grabbing everything from behind and nudging it up. So that saves me from having to reach back here and grab a bunch of disparate, separate pieces and try to keep everything in time. Now, I do have on my mouse, I have a selection shortcut that if I were in my booth, let's say, and I was using my X Touch 1 and all the dialogue was already on different tracks, right? If I highlight clicked everything with my upper left, it would not only grab everything on that track, but it will grab it's I think the command is grab all that follows or something like that, right? And then that will grab everything on every track that follows where that marker is from. So I can drag it all up. But that's, again, use case. And this, every morning I come in here, sit down, I record directly into my Roadcaster with this, and then get that solid take, export it out, and then drag it into Logic. Slightly inelegant, I know, but it's kind of the workflow that I've developed that helps me move the fastest. Um, so I just wanted you guys to see that there's a gigantic stripe behind me here.
Even covered in gore as I was. Perhaps that even gave it some credence to my wild
Now
state.
I knew that I screwed that up, and part of the reason why I know is because this section here, this big empty section, that's me being frustrated with myself and taking a second to gather my brains and go, nah, we need to do that differently. So this is where I believe I got it right here, and the reason why I'm saying that is because if you look, this waveform here and this waveform here look pretty much the same. This waveform that follows looks a little bit different. Now, it could be the same, or it could be me speaking with a different inflection at a different volume. And so, I mean, this is one thing that you do develop over time is the ability. I mean, there are certain words, the way I say them, where I can tell what is being said by looking at the waveform, uh, which admittedly is actually kind of handy. But, um, I'm a big fan of not creating more work for yourself. And it's kind of like learning your own shortcuts. Okay. If I know that this is wrong, one of two things is going to follow: the correct take on that line, or you'll see similar, 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 and then different. To me, instead of dog clicking myself with different markers, I know this one's bad. This one follows. This one looks different. So that means that right here, this is probably the keeper take. So instead of listening to both of these all the way through, which is pointless, I know visually that that's what's going on. So save myself the time and the step and just immediately go here and eliminate that one. And I'm guessing I'm guessing that this one is correct. If I'm wrong, this one is correct because they're different yet similar. They're generally similar runtime, so there is still a chance that this one is actually the right one.
It was obvious to everyone.
Nope. So I was right in the first place. This is the keeper track.
Perhaps that even gave some credence to my wild statement.
So I, you know, Obviously, I'm taking a lot more time doing this with you guys, but that actually speeds the plow. If it were just me, I'd have been done with this 2 minutes ago, minus the explanation. So I would have saved myself a step just by trusting that what I was seeing was indicative of what I'd be hearing in playback. Okay. So, oh, X Touch 1 is a control surface made by Behringer that I turned Anthony onto, and they're pretty miraculous little things. I'd be able to show you if I could go freehand with my camera, but it's on mount right now, so I don't want to. Do just know that both Anthony and I will sing the praises of X Touch 1 to you at some point in the near future. Good news is that for what you pay, you get an incredible amount of functionality with that thing, including a shuttle wheel. Shuttle wheels are life. So,
Covered in gore as I was. Perhaps that even gave some credence to my wild statement. It was obvious to everyone something strange was going on.
oh, very true with the gas mileage, dude. Yeah, you're right. If you can, I'm really kind of a fan of if you can get one of those into your life early and build your workflow around it, you will be much more efficient in edit than other people are who don't have one and didn't effectively grow up with one, right? I'm not responsible, Z. I am not responsible for you burning money. I'm just saying that out loud. Okay.
To my wild statement. It was obvious to everyone something strange was going on. Other patients followed along after seeing the more paranoid ones do it, and they covered their ears as well.
So this story is about patients in a mental hospital getting brainwashed by somebody playing subliminal messages and turning them into cannibals. And so at least you guys have a little bit of story context. I can pull up the Booth Camp Disco. Is somebody sell? Oh, that's right. Wait. Um, uh, George is selling hers, isn't she? That's who I thought was selling it. Yeah, dude, Z, buy it from George. Keep it in the family.
Strange was going on. Other patients followed along after seeing the more paranoid ones do it, and they covered their ears as well. One
Yeah, Anthony, Mr. Z is Grumpy Monk or whatever grumpy version you are now, dude. Oh, Grumpy the voiceover guy. Sorry, didn't mean to screw up your brand.
after seeing the more paranoid ones do it, and they covered their ears as well.
How's the team doing, Grumpy? Are we winning or losing?
The more paranoid ones do it, and they covered their ears as well. One patient seemed to have a breakdown and covered his ears, getting down on the floor, rocking back and forth, screaming.
Okay. You could tell it was first thing when I recorded this because I got nothing but throat thry at the end of words. Blah.
The music came back on suddenly, very loudly.
Yeah, and eventually, like I say, I'll get all this stuff figured out because there's a bunch of cool stuff I can do with both this platform and I got what is it? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. I got a 32 button Stream Deck. Yeah, take care, Anthony. I got a 32 button Stream Deck, and there's all sorts of fancy stuff I can do with this for the live stream. And I mean, one of the nice things though is that I can can get rid of myself. I can put myself back in. I can go boom like that, and then minimize that again. So, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff I can do. So, well, it'll get there. I seem to be having about because I'm also monitoring myself live. How I'm, seeing your comments and everything is just on another browser tab on a different monitor, and it seems like I've got about a second delay, which is actually pretty impressive if you consider that, my signal is going out of here, going out into the interwebs, getting fired up into a satellite somewhere, and then dumped down into YouTube. 1 second return time is not too shabby. So, all right, Grump. We'll see if somebody else jumps in here with us, but
the music came back on suddenly, very loudly. We had already put our own earplugs back in, and they blocked the sound despite the decibel level.
yeah, that's nothing but throat. Blah. Thumbing up Monty's comment on disco. So this is probably a cough. It was a cough. My coughs look very distinctive to me. So make sure there's nothing valuable in this gigantic swathe of emptiness. Boom.
Blocked the sound despite the decibel level. Many of the patients had managed to cover their ears in time, but some were.
Oh, this is the most unenjoyable part of being a narrator. I gotta find myself an editor who works for, I don't know, corn chips. There, that'd work.
With their ears in time, but some were.
Now this is interesting. You can see here, right here, I've got a noise. I've got a noise right here. And normally, if I was being super fastidious, I'd go in there and I'd excise that out. But because I am running a noise gate and Bruce-free, that gets minimized to the point where it's below the noise threshold and you don't even hear it. So most times I would go in there and surgically remove that. I'm just that anal. So,
but some were not so trusting, and their eyes began to glaze.
Screwed that up. So I'm figuring, again, like I said before, this is probably the beginning of the next take because this looks a lot like this. So I'm just assuming that I got it right on the second shot. Get in there, ripple delete it away, and away we go.
To cover their ears in time. But some were not so trusting, and their eyes began to gaze past us 1,000 yards and beyond.
And then you stop where the next word goes in, highlight, excise out the silence with ripple.
And beyond. They began to march slowly towards us and then ran in our direction.
So I think there's a little bit too much space here. So again, I'm just going to cut that in half, hand nudge that up with a X-fade crossover of the noise floor as it stands.
To march slowly towards us and then ran in our direction.
Yeah. So this is going to be an interesting little bit. This is what me saying, oh shit, looks like in a waveform. So this is going to be I'm going to put myself in the hospital hallway. All right. So make sure this is where I want it to start. So get rid of that. And then I just pop that down there. And then this is obviously right here. This is obviously going to be me saying, I said, as the narrator. So in that case, what I do is drag it up. And then I tend to put, when somebody says something in a scene, I tend to put my disclaimer, which is the word that the narrator uses to say I said or he said or she said. I tend to put it right on the back and at times overlapping the trailing disfluent sound of what the character said. Again, that's just one of those other things that simulates a reading experience in a listening experience. And it also helps break up because, like I say, I don't do a lot of dramatic voices. Um, so it helps offset and remind the listener what character is speaking, even though all of them are me. So I'm just do this to tidy things up just a bit.
Then ran in our direction. Oh, shit, I said.
There. And so this is actually going to be a funny little bit.
Shit, I said.
So that was a thing that the author put in to simulate what it sounds like when you say oh shit with earplugs in and you hear yourself. So I'm going to do that. I've got a track down here that says internal thoughts. And what that is a track that's got a decent amount of reverb on it. Now, I know that we normally say reverb is death, but when you're using it as an audio effect, then it's appropriate. So I know that that is where that's going to happen. And then here is my explanation of it. So I'm going to bring it up here, and I might actually change that and give a different effect here in a second.
Said. My voice came out sounding like a comedic trumpet telling you something.
So I'm going to tighten that up a little bit and put it a little bit over the end of that sound, and you'll get the effect here in a second.
Oh shit, I said. My voice came out sounding like a comedic trumpet telling you something silly had just happened in a sitcom or cartoon.
So that little trick, that little effect actually, again, expands the listening experience for people and makes it be so, you actually get a lot more information with reading using your eyes. Like if something is in italics, then you know it's like an internal thought or a reference or something like that, or an explanation in this case. So stacking your tracks in such a way and leveraging your narration against the recording that you're working with, and putting it in or at times over other sounds can actually be really helpful to the listener. So that's good. We'll leave that there.
My voice came out sounding like a comedic trumpet telling you something silly had just happened in a sitcom or cartoon. Trumpet telling you something silly had just happened in a sitcom or cartoon. The office where Samantha was controlling the PA system was only a short distance away.
I might have retaken that. I didn't like the way I said away. So I bet you this is going to be that same line again.
The office where
I was right. So that just means I don't even have to listen to it again. Just get rid of it.
or cartoon. The office where Samantha was controlling the PA system was only a short distance away.
Oop. Took the whole thing. Nope. Don't want the whole thing gone. I'm not quite sure if that's a word or a cough.
Way. But they're
It was a screw up. So now I know that the word is but, which means I'm going to want it to follow up quickly. I might have retaken that whole line.
distance away. But there were now a dozen.
Oh, okay. So this was a drag. I said it but instead of but. So, and that's something that I leave in every once in a while when a character or the narrator is stressed out or confused. It's just a natural speech idiosyncrasy that actually helps sell the illusion of intimacy with the listener. Not everything I don't do things in a way that makes everything absolutely perfect all the time. Um, Audio fidelity, I try to provide perfection, but by way of narration, especially if the narration is done in a style, if it's written in a style that you can tell is kind of loose, then I'll often leave disfluences in there because that's how real people talk when they're being genuine.
System was only a short distance away, but there were now a dozen mental patients blocking our path, most of them with one subliminally implanted thought on their mind. On their mind, to rip out our throats. Need to go.
So here's a character speaking. So that goes in the hallway. And I happen to remember that when the character comes back in, I did not like the way I said the word now. This will be, we need to go, is this line. And then it'll be Philip said, blah, blah, blah. And then this right here is the word now, but I leaned on it too hard. That's why you can see it's all really big. I like this take better. So, being that I know that that's what I did, I just have to come in here and excise that, get that out, and then move this up. And then knowing that it's going to be the same character in the same environment, this timing is going to be all right. So now I just drag this down here, clean that up, drag it over. Now my pacing is pretty much what it should be. I might have some fine tuning, but when we listen back,
The roads. We need to go, Philip mouthed, pointing downstairs. Now. We opened the door beside.
and so instead of having to listen through that whole thing, I just trust myself that I know what I was seeing would be reflective of what I was hearing. And that probably saved me 25, 30 seconds. And that doesn't sound like a lot of saving until you spread out all those savings over, you know, hours of editing. That turns into minutes of time saved. Minutes of time saved means your rate per finished hour, your rate per finished hour is fixed. But saving time in edit means that the amount of money that you get back from that finished hour pay is higher. Every single minute that ticks by, every single second that ticks by means money. And so the faster you can do editing and the less time you spend doing needless, pointless things, the more money you wind up walking away with.
Now. We opened the door beside us and retreated back to the basement. We ran down the stairs 2 and 3 steps at a time and reached the door leading to the basement hallway. The basement hallway. The lower level of the hospital was still empty for the most part, and we fled to the west. Fled to the west. I imagined a dozen brainwashed patients.
Didn't like that. I can tell I stumbled over brainwashed. So I just immediately go, nope, I wouldn't have left that in there. So let's just get it out and let's see if I was right.
And we fled to the west. I imagined a dozen brainwashed patients running down the stairs behind us and ran even.
So I want to tighten this up. So again, this is just another one where instead of doing ripple delete, I just drag it and crossfade it over itself.
Behind us and ran even faster along the polished linoleum floors.
All right. Well, listen, guys, or at least Grumpy. I got to get ready for doing a coaching session here at noon. So I'm going to end the stream, and I appreciate you being in here helping me test this. And yeah, there'll be more of this coming soon. So meanwhile, I am going to sign off. But until next time, everybody, or at least every Grumpy, I will talk to you guys later. Thanks a lot. Bye.